Good morning. We are in the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, Mika Hashem Elokeinu Magbi L'Sheves, on page 429. Chav Tes. Okay. Discussing essentially the first verse, Mika Hashem Elokeinu, and Magbi L'Sheves. Now, briefly, what we learned is that this verse captures the very essence of our avodah. That Hamagbi, when we elevate ourselves and the world through accepting the yoke of heaven, Mika Hashem Elokeinu, that we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and we elevate the world through Torah, Mitzvos, Kabolos, and Torah Mitzvos, as he says. I use the words that he used in the beginning of the paragraph on page 428. Shayidei shenikra Hashem Elokeinu, we declare Hashem Elokeinu, b'Torah Mitzvos lamata, shemakablim el Malchus Shemayim l'kim ritzeni ha'atzmis b'mitzvos b'peil mamish, l'dvar melech ha'pnimis ki'in shetam lechuni aleichem dafke. So we're crowning God and we're declaring God and we're doing it through Torah Mitzvos and we're accepting that yoke of heaven, which is all in the world, all the concept of a magbi. Through that, we awaken, we stimulate, those are good words, and generate. Reach all the way to the highest levels because that's what Hashem wanted. Remember, Seif Ma'asav Machshavat Tchil and Nesava Kadosh Baruch Hu in Atzmos Nesava to be a Dira B'Tachtenim, and that's what we're achieving through our avodah. That what should happen? That should create L'Sheves Sheyeshev Al Kisei Ron V'Nisei Shebatzmusei Mamish. That Atzmos, which on its own we learned from the Medrash, for example, when we spoke about Nochen Kisecha Ma'oz, where he said that before the Eden said to Hashem before Shira, you were you in your place. Now you are you in your place, also with us. In other words, that very Atzmos can also be revealed in the fullest sense in that Dira B'Tachtenim. The Mittler Rebbe doesn't use the word Dira B'Tachtenim here, though he used it earlier. But to bring together this and other places of Chassidus, especially in the Rebbe's Siches, Dira B'Syashvash, that he wants a Dira B'Tachtenim. He doesn't want a Dira B'Elyenim in spiritual worlds, in Gan Eden, in Elam Haba, in Atzilus, or Lifnei Tzimtzum. You want to dafke Dira B'Tachtenim, and that is to create Sheyeshev Al Kisei Ron V'Nisei Shabatzmusei Mamish. So we're not talking about a Yerida, like we talk, for example, Malchus of Atzilus descends into Bria and sits on the throne. That's the king as he relates to his subjects. Here he remains in his essential state, and he's also B'Syasvash Yeshiva L'Sheves, Magbi L'Sheves, in the form of a Kisei for Atzmusei Mamish, like he said earlier, L'Maila, L'Mata, like he is L'Maila. That's this yeshiva. So it's not a yeshiva of tzimtzum, it's the yeshiva of integration, is the way I would phrase it. And that's what it says, Magbi L'Sheves, the yeshiva zeis, who B'Kisei Elyon, Shenema Nochin Kisecha Ma'oz Dafka, as we learned before. Okay. Good. So that is now bringing together the verse, not just the Magbi L'Sheves part, but the first half. Mika Hashem Elokeinu. He doesn't say it explicitly, but Hashem Elokeinu, he did say it earlier, and we'll say it later, that's connected to V'yadai Ta'ayim Ke'avayahu Elokim. The Hashem Elokim connection, where Hashem Havaya is like a more transcendent level. Elokim is more the divine as it comes into existence. So it's all within that. There'll be more discussion on this. I just wanted to make that clear, even though here he's not, this few lines, he's not mentioning Hashem Elokeinu directly like that, but he's definitely alluding to it, because he's saying clearly Hashem Elokeinu, and a few times he said it's like the same thing as Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu, and I see going forward, especially the next page, 429 and on, he's going to talk about that some more. So it's going to connect to V'yadai Ta'ayim V'Hashem Avayu Elokim B'Shamayim Malvaros B'Tochas Einoid, but we'll get to that when we need to get to that. Okay. The next piece is a parenthesis that ends in the second manuscript on the third line of the next page. So we'll go over that now. That's summary. We learned this yesterday as well. So he said now he's going back to Rosh Hashanah. Now, the reason he's bringing Rosh Hashanah, most likely, even though it's not a Rosh Hashanah mimer, is because he wants to give a practical application of all this today. Like he said earlier on the previous paragraph, he said that, well, he said like this, that we, the Yesh Nagam Ata, on the fifth line of the page, he said, we have this also today. So it's not just something that will be revealed, La'asad Lave, it will be in the full glory and a full permanent Dira B'Tachtenim and so on. But we also have it today. Like we talked about Matan Torah, we talked about the Beis HaMikdash. So he says, where do we have it in our Veda today? The Kabolos el Malchus Shemayim. When we do this work, where instead of dedicating our lives to our own interests and needs, we align ourselves and accept God as king. So we are accepting not just God as he relates to us, but the God no, it's not just Malchus as it relates to us, but Malchus that's rooted in Remes HaAtzmis, like by Rosh Hashanah, when we say the Malchus. And by the way, Yud Psukim, I looked it up. I was correct originally. We say 10 Psukim. We say 3 from Torah, 3 from Nevi'im, 3 from Ksuvim, and then we say Shema Yisrael. So there's 10 Psukim Malchus that we say in Musaf. So the Yud Psukim is going, Yud Pei is Yud Psukim. Malchus shetam lechuni aleichem dafka. So when we do that, Rosh Hashanah, we're reaching all the way higher than Levush Malchus, as the divine relates to existence, like we call Melech HaGoyim, the king of the nations, or Melech HaOlam, the king of the world. We're talking about Melech HaKodesh, Melech HaYachid. We're reaching all the way to that place that's higher than all the Tzimtzumim, and more than just Malchus of Atzilus, as it's Malchus over the Seraphim of Bria. But we're going all the way up to the highest levels and drawing that down into Nochin Kisechem in the form of yeshiva, like we just said. Yeah. Okay. Now, in the parentheses, he said he went back to Rosh Hashanah. So that too is ma'erer, like the Aveda Lamata, when we, on Rosh Hashanah, we daven to Hashem and we dedicate ourselves and we blow shofar and everything that comes with it, and we say the 10 Psukim Malchus. What we're doing is what he said in general of our Aveda. But Rosh Hashanah, it's more focused on that. So what are we doing? We're ma'erer li as the currently yem rishon the Mitzvos Bereishis. We awaken the highest levels of Atmos. Why did God create the world in the first place? He didn't create a world just to create a world. He created a world because he wanted to be a melech, hamlechuni aleichem, and he wanted to be a dira b'tachtenim, a place where this world would be his kisei, would be his dwelling place, would be the place that he resides in the fullest sense of the word. So Rosh Hashanah, when we Kabolos el Malchus through the Yud Psukim of the Malchus, we're touching that place. And Zikaron Yem Rishon, we're reminding Hashem, so to speak. We're recreating the beginning of it all. Why was there a Bereishis Bara Elokim in the first place? Because of this Tam Lechuni Aleichem. So we're mamshich that, and we're mamshich Al Shem Leveish Eiz Ein Eiz Ela Teira Mi Melochim Yimlechu, and the same thing we achieve every day. Again, a microcosm B'Krishma. Remember, we said before, Shema Yisrael Shem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. We're essentially crowning God as King. What are we saying, Krishma? Shemamshichim and Melech Yochid Levade. We're bringing from the highest levels of the divine, as he is exclusively, uniquely, separate from everything. Liyes Alufish Aleilam Ba'alev the Echad. That he should be the master of the world. He should be, that highest level should be one with how he is in the existence of Echad. Echad is Aleph Ches Dalet. Alufish Leilam in the 7 heavens and earth, in space and time, and the Vav and the Daled Ruchis Elam, what he calls the Vav Ksavis, and that's why we're Mairich B'Daled. When we say Kol HaMairich B'Echad, the Daled, that we are the B'Daled, the Omrim Shetamlichu B'Shamayim Va'aretz So from his very core place, the highest level is coming down, a place that is completely removed from existence. And that's Magbi L'Sheves Ba'alav Agba the Remus Ha'atzmus, that we are elevate all the way to the Remus of Atzmus, Liyes Yeshiv, they should come and settle into our existence in a integrated fashion. And though I read another line, I'm going to stop right now. This is the summary. We're going to learn now inside what this means exactly. Because when you read it, it may sound that, 1 second, we're back to Tzimtzum. He's coming down a Tzimtzum-dik way. That's not what he's saying. He wants to say that in the world of Tzimtzum, in a world that where initially the divine was concealed and the divine is diminished, we, through our Avodah, Rosh Hashanah, Shema, or in general our Avodah, are drawing down the highest levels and revealing them below as they are above. So in a world of diminished Gilui, we are bringing Atzmus to be Yeshiv al Kisei Magbi L'Sheves. Okay, that's a summary. If anybody wants to ask anything, please do, and then we'll continue reading here. As I said yesterday, to me at least, when I read it, it's the flow is so, it's a little overwhelming, to be honest, because on one hand, the ideas he's already said earlier, the general thrust of this has been discussed a number of times. But every time he discusses it, you see, he throws in more details. So when you do that, it becomes like, okay, what does each detail add? And I'm trying to organize it here, but I just wanted to point out, because now he threw in Einei Zelatera and a few other lines that he didn't say exactly those words. So the general gist of it, I think, is quite clear. But the details all are obviously vital as well. And I see now in the next line, which is why I wanted to stop yesterday, I see he's now going to address another point, which we've talked about a bit, because what do we have right now? So far, what we have established is that there's two levels of the divine presence within existence that relates to existence. That he called Melech Ha'olam, Melech. Then that's like Malchus of Shtalshlus. Then he spoke about Malchus, that's Malchus Ha'atzmis, that's completely removed, Melech Yochid. And the kavan is that through our Aveda, we reach that highest level and we bring that down below. So now the highest is down below, all the way down the lowest. So you have Hamagbi L'Sheves, Hamagbi to the highest levels, Hamagbi of the Yud, all the way, elevating the Yud all the way to the Etzem, and then drawing down the Etzem that he should reside, dwell in this world, on his Kisei, L'Sheves. So he also, but yeshiva, on a certain sense, can also indicate a certain element of limitation, because when you're standing upright, like your full upright position, even though he said earlier Augustus Yeshiv is actually Atzmus's Yeshiv, not a diminished level. There's a level of yeshiva that's a tzimtzum. So I think he's going to now address something, a new point in this context. So let's read it and then try to figure out what he's saying here. I'm on the fourth line of page 429. And the pages can be found at ayinbeis.com. So we're reading from there. So it's at the end of the bracket. So he says like this. So Magbil L'Sheves, we know, is the halav akbar beremus atzmus liyes. It's not just elevating. Remember, the kavanah of the Magbi is to come into L'Sheves. Just like the kavanah of L'Sheves, or I should say the other way around. The kavanah of the Yerida is in order to bring to Hagba, Magbi. The kavanah of the Magbi is to come down, not to remain above. He made that very clear at the bottom of page 426. So it's Liyes Yeshiv. He should come and settle in Yeshiv. Behelam vehester sheba atzmus. Shenikre kos yudkei oikise. The Aleph. Kamoy bekesa, the Rosh Hashanah canal. Or bekise, the Rosh Hashanah. So what does this mean exactly? Somebody we're talking about Helam vehester. Sheba atzmus. This was not mentioned before. We know Yoshes Cheshach Sisrei was mentioned. We talked about the Helam Ha'atzmi in our discussions. But the mimer here, how suddenly this come into Yeshiv Behelam Behester? That's why, again, I said I stopped because it struck me that this is, what is he saying exactly here? So most likely what he's saying is that we're talking about Atzmus as he's higher than Gili. Remember, we said Atzmus, not only is he in the highest level, but he's higher than Elyon and Tachten. He's also higher than Helam and Gili. So we're not talking about God as he is revealed. The revelation of godliness, especially after the Tzimtzum, is in the form of Kavachut. A Kavachut is a measured flow that is commensurate and proportionate to the Makablim. That's like the teacher teaching an idea that is tailored to the students. Here we're talking about reaching Remus Ha'atzmus. We're talking about Halak Ba all the way to where Nesava Kadosh Baruch Hu, to the Etzem, Seif Ma'aser Machshav Tchila, what God intended was he wanted a dira below. So we're talking about a level that's higher than just regular revelation. And yet that too will be manifest down below. So my first initial reaction to this is that not that it remains concealed. You're reaching a level that is higher than Gili and Helam, and that itself is becoming in a state of yeshiva. So in other words, Yeshiv also has another side to it. Besides integration, it also means you are manifesting that etzem, and he calls it Helam Behester Sheba Atzmus, which is very, very similar to the idea of Helam Ha'atzmi. I am careful to not say it's that level because he has not used that word, and the Mittler Rebbe does have the expression of Helam Ha'atzmi in places, so I'm not positive, but he's definitely talking about Helam Behester Sheba Atzmi. He's not talking about the Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum is not a Helam Behester Sheba Atzmi, and the Tzimtzum is the divine choosing to conceal his light, to conceal his consciousness, so therefore you can leave space for existence, and then comes the stream, the laser beam stream, so to speak, of the Kav, that then creates Ishtalshlus as we know it. But he's saying Helam Behester Sheba Atzmus. So immediately brings back to mind, if you go back to the previous page, what I'm doing now is I'm just processing it with you listening in. I'm trying to process what he's saying here. So if you look back on the previous page, he says, four lines from the bottom, Hamagbila Shev is the yeshiva zeisu bekisei elyon, she'ama nochin kisecha ma'oz. Kisei elyon, which to me is very, in other words, there's something, the kisei elyon, we're not talking about kisei atachten. We're not talking about the kisei of Elam Habriya, like I mentioned, Elam the Kursaya, Elam HaKursaya, where we talk about Malchus of Atzilus resides in the kisei of Bria. We're talking kisei elyon. So it sounds like he's talking about a kisei all the way to the highest levels, because remember, we talked about Augustus Yeshiv. We're not talking about the Melech that on the bottom of page 427, he said, there's the Melech that comes down, Tzimtzum berichuk mokim pone b'chol rekom. Mashenken ato Melech Yeshiv. Yeah. So he's talking here about a yeshiva that's a higher level of yeshiva than when we talk about a king coming out to his subjects to relate to them. Here we're talking about the yeshivas within the etzem itself. The etzem itself is, so to speak, manifesting in a state of yeshiva. So my thinking is that yeshiva, by definition, has a certain Helam Behester, because the king is coming down, so to speak, but he doesn't want to say coming down to relate to existence. He's coming down, he's manifesting within existence. That's how I understand what he's saying. And he calls it, why is it called kisei? So for two reasons. Kisei can be, even though it's with an aleph, but you could read it kos yudke. Kos is a covering. It conceals or covers yudke. Or kisei with an aleph, may be kisei the Rosh Hashanah, which most likely means here the throne of Rosh Hashanah. Or remember, there's a pasuk, tiku b'cheder shefer, b'keseh l'yem chagenu. So, but the keseh there is with a hey. So I'm not sure what he means by Bekisei de Rosh Hashanah. Does he mean the throne of Rosh Hashanah? Like we said before, Tamlechuni Aleichem for Melech Remus Atzmis? Or does he mean Bekesa Liyem Chagenu, that Rosh Hashanah, there's no moon, that's why it's called Bekesa, it's concealed still, but it's a concealment here. I would say this is the level of concealment within the Etzem, not concealment of the Tzimtzum that he talks about on bottom of page 427, where the king is manifests itself and leaves a space for existence, the tzimtzum that leads to the kav chut. It clearly he's distinguishing. So you could say, why didn't he say this earlier? I don't know. But he's saying it now, and by comparing it to what we learned earlier, it sounds like he's contrasting that with a tzimtzum, the lower level of tzimtzum. Here it's talking about helam v'hester sheba atzmus, which we learned when we did learn about helam atzmi. It means God's very power that's beyond revelation and beyond concealment. Helam v'hester atzmi sheba atzmus doesn't mean he's concealed. It means like yoshes cheshach sisrei. Now I hesitate using that expression also because yoshes cheshach sisrei, if you may recall, he said was a lower level. That was the level of keser. That's ucham hu kodem ilus ha'ilus. But it means yoshes cheshach sisrei literally means that concealment is Yasha. He established cheshach sisrei, his hiding place, his place. So it could be that he's referring to that level or even higher. But bottom line, a place that's beyond revelation and concealment is what I would say it means. Even though, again, he doesn't say that language, but that's what it sounds like to me. And it could be this will become clearer as we learn on. But I just wanted to explain these two lines, and I'll stop if anybody wants to ask anything. I do suspect, one second, I do suspect that we're going to learn the next few lines may bring more clarity because the style of the Mittler Rebbe has been that he often says a line, doesn't really explain it fully, but as you go on, it starts developing. So again, this is a distinction between the Rebbe Rashab, usually doesn't do it that way. But I think we will understand it better as we go along. But still, I'll stop in case, because this is a new, I don't say a new topic, it's a new point that hasn't been really discussed till now.
Could it be another way of saying 10 hidden spirits? The ones that are in the Godhead, so to speak?
No, not Esespheres Hagnuzis. I don't think so. No, because when he says Helam v'hester sheba atzmus, it's not usually referring to Esespheres Hagnuzis. That's already a lower level in Lifnei Tzimtzum. I thought of it, but I don't think he means that. I think he means more what the Rebbe Rashab would call koiche shaloi lahoyer. There's the yecholte lahoyer, yecholte shaloi lahoyer. Remember, the two kavim, the two tracks that we've been learning about, Yechud Eloi, Yechud Tata, or Mamala Kalam and Sevav Kalam, is one is God's power to illuminate or to express, and God's power to withhold. So in the Etzem, it's called Yecholte, the Yechelus of Hashem, God's capacity to reveal, God's capacity to conceal. It's not yet actual revelation and concealment. If I were to have to speculate right now, I would say that's what he's talking about here. The Yecholte Shalei Lahoyer. But that's a language used more commonly by the Rebbe Rashab. That's why I'm saying if the Rebbe Rashab had written further Ayin Beis, I very likely he would have used that expression. Also, for example, Helam Ha'atzmi even, and especially the word Etzem Ha'oyer. This is a more Rebbe Rashab language. Not that it's the Rebbe Rashab was Machadish, but he uses it more commonly and it's easier to understand. The Mittler Rebbe uses words that are a little more, I would say the word chiridik, a little more philosophical, and sometimes not fully clear what level he's talking about. But it will become clearer as we go, I believe. But that's, so I think it's much higher than the 10 hidden spheres.
Is it possible that, let's say he is referring to the Helam Ha'atzmi, as we understand that term by the Rebbe Rashab, is it possible saying Lios Yoshev that our avoda should bring the Eibishter even at his highest levels, the Helam Ha'atzmi, to be settled into that place? Meaning to say, it's not. This is not. I mean, I'm asking. I'm not saying. Seems to be that this could be talking about not Lasi Lavo, but Mamish now. That is to say, Al Yedea, by our Torah, learning Torah, doing mitzvahs, that creates a certain integration, iskalos, or a certain yeshiva. No, I won't say iskalos per se, but a certain yeshiva that even at the highest level, the Eibishter can sit instead of have to stand, because he's seeing the world operating as he desires. Maybe not in its ultimate perfection, but he doesn't have to be standing unless necessarily on his toes, like God forbid the Eibishter should ever stand on his toes, like being. Is it possible?
What you said is exactly what you said is what we learned. This you said is what we learned, but this has nothing to do with Helam Ha'atzmi and Helam Ba'atzmus. What you just said is an accurate presentation that our Torah mitzvahs and Rosh Hashanah, Lasad Love will be in the full-blown fashion, is what it does. That the way Atzmus is Lamaya. That's what you just said is a good summary of the general picture before we even got to these last few lines. That the way he is Lamayla, meaning at the highest levels, Magbi, that's the way he comes down and he's settled in, integrated, Dir b'tachtenim. So that's correct. I'm trying to explain why is he talking about Helam v'Hester sheba Atzmus.
I mean, even at that, I mean, he's settled in even at that level. That's what I mean.
Yeah, but that's exactly what I'm saying. That he's talking about Atzmus as he's higher than Helam and Gili. That's what I think he's saying.
Yeah. Okay.
Why would he bring that here? Why would he bring that here?
So, why would he bring it? Well, to say that there maybe is a certain order or stability in the world, even without Yemos Mashiach.
Yeah, but if you take away this whole line of Helam v'Hester, nothing's missing, seemingly.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll see. Let's see how it goes here. Let me. Any other question? I want to continue because I'm eager to see how this develops here. Okay. But again, I don't want to stop anyone from any question. Okay, so continuing on. Kamoi shashamayim el yenim kisei. So we know there's a pasuk called Hashamayim Kisi, Ba'aretz Hadem Ragli. God says, heaven is my throne, and the earth is my footstool. So you have like a throne and a footstool. So when God manifests himself, the heaven is his throne, and the earth is his footstool. I believe that's the pasuk he's referring to. Shamayim el yenim kisei, the celestial heavens, or the higher heavens, the supernal heavens, are kisei. What level is that? Chinas tehirei elah. That's tehirei elah. I'll explain that in a moment. Va'aretz, and earth, is bechinas mamala kalalma b'chlal hadoim raglov. That's in general mamala kalalma, which is the divine as it relates and enters, permeates, and is the immanent energy within existence. That's hadoim raglov. That's his footstool. Kamoi v'tachas raglov, like the pasuk that says v'tachas raglov in mishpatim, that beneath his legs, meaning his legs are beneath his legs is the earth, which is the footstool. Melech al kol haaretz, melech ha'elam. That's how he is melech on earth, on the world, and melech, the king of the world. So in other words, there's two parts of the verse. Shemayim is kisei, tehirei elah, which sounds to me is like sevav kalalman, and aretz is like mamala kalalman. So let me explain. Again, he's using terms very briefly, because seemingly, if you said mamala kalalman, why did the Mitler Rebbe say sevav kalalman? Why did he use the word tehirei elah? So most likely is because he's relying, again, he's being very brief, he's relying that we are going to figure it out. So there's a level called tehirei elah, and there's a level called tehirei tata. We've learned about this before. What does the word tehirah mean? So tehirah can mean brightness. Of course, it can mean purity, and it can be also heaven. Tehirah is also a name for heaven. So tehirei elah and tehirei tata are words from Zohar. In the beginning, the famous Zohar I quote many times, Zohar, in the Hagdam, the introduction to Zohar, page 15a. Bereishis Menisa de Malka, in the beginning of when it arose in his will or his permission of the king, Goliv Galifu, he engraved the tehirei elah. That's what it says. In tehirei elah, Chassidus elaborates what is this level called tehirei elah. So there's actually interesting note from the Rebbe on this in the Maimer Ranat, Hecholzu Ranat, which I'm not going to go into detail because it's not really the topic here. I'll just use enough to explain this. But if you want it more detail, you can look in that footnote. I can tell you where it is later when I look up the page. A long footnote. So tehirei elah is most likely here, means the oil before the tzimtzum. That where tehirei tata is sometimes referred to ak, after the tzimtzum. So tehirei elah and tehirei tata. Because when you say that Bereishis Menusa de Malka, Golav Galifut, often refers to the 10 hidden spheres that he engraved in the level called tehirei elah. In other words, first there was a level of tehirei elah, which was like a seamless field of divine energy and divine consciousness. In that, he engraved doesn't mean physically engraved, it means he envisioned the 10 spheres that would ultimately really be formed after the Tzimtzum. So in that context, the Iri law would be like Seviv Kalalman, means it's the divine beyond existence. So I think that's what he's saying here. That we say Kisei, Hashemayim Kisi, you're saying the heaven is my throne. We're talking about Iri law. It's his throne, but we're talking about not the throne, the lower level of throne as it relates to existence. We're talking about the level of what he calls Kos Yutke or Kisei Ba'alef, Shemayim Aliyam Kisei Iri law. Then comes the second level. The second level is Oretz. Oretz is Mamala Kalaman. That's already his footstool. His legs go downward. The footstool, not the throne, it's now the footstool. And that refers to Mamala Kalaman, Melech HaKol HaOretz, Melech HaElam. So let's see where he's going with this as well. We're still in the middle of a flow here. Let's continue. Va'al Yedei Ma, I'm not sure how to read this. You could read it. And how do we get to this level? Or I think and how do we get to this level? Let me read it that way. It sounds to me right. Which means you're going upward to these highest levels, l'sheves, to have him sit down, so to speak, and be integrated. B'kisei elyon, in the higher throne, the throne we're talking about now, the higher level. How do you achieve this? What we just said. That Atzmus is what he is. We know what he is. He's what he is. But that's not what he wants. He wants Nesava, HaKadosh Baruch Hu liyasle dir b'tachtenim. He wants an achievement here. The achievement is done through us. We're accomplishing through our halah, meaning our magbiyah, by elevating through Birurim of Torah Mitzvos Lamata, this world. That's what we reach. The Magbi reaches the causes of Lashevis. Shahu el Mitzvos. This is through the yoke of Mitzvos, meaning Kabolos, which is Kabolos Malchus Shemaim, a Mitzvos. Shenikraim or Shenikrais Zdaka. So he's bringing back the idea. Remember, Mitzvos are called Zdaka. Behei. As Zdaka with Hey, not the Yud. We turn the Dalet into a Yud, with the Yud into a Hey. Should Zdaka Zu Teremim Goy. This Zdaka elevates, like the word Magbiya, the Goy, which means the Goy as it is down below, it elevates it upward. Lamaila elevates it upward. Lias Magbi L'Sheves, in order that it should be a Magbi, that elevation should then come downward as he is, exactly as he is above. Kamei Rosh Hashanah, like by Rosh Hashanah, when Shemagbi L'Sheves Kanal. When we crown God as king and we accept his sovereignty through our Kabolos and the mitzvahs that we discussed, we cause him to sit on the throne, as he said before, the throne of Mishpat, the throne of kingship, to rule over existence. But now we've reached the highest levels of Malchus Atzmis, Remus Atzmis of Malchus, and brought that downwards. The Yud Zeh. Now I know what is he adding here that we haven't learned before. The only thing I see that he's adding is connecting it all, the Magbi L'Sheves, to what we learned earlier about Tzedakah, and the way he's like rounding it all out, which the Mittler Rebbe does as he continues the flow, because it's also being the elaboration. It's very useful from time to time to just like reconnect the dots, so to speak. So he says, "V'yud zeh de Magbi," going back to the point of the Magbi is with a Yud, not just Magbiya, but Yud, Magbi. Zeu bo rak machmas Yud ktano shebedalid. That comes only due to the small Yud in the Dalid. The Dalid on its own was less lamagama klum, was dal, poor, impoverished, like the destitute, or the other words I used before. On this empty, when you add the Yud ktano, the left leg of the little Yud to the left side of the Dalid, it turns it into Hey. Shenase Hey becomes a Hey. Shahu b'chinas hadzdaka the mitzvahs canal, and that turns the word tzedek into tzedaka of the mitzvahs canal. Mishum shenos tchilosan b'seifon, because the beginning is wedged in the end. The seif v'seifim b'tchilosan. And now he adds, and the end is wedged in the beginning. Ki seif maisa, the full statement, b'machshava tchila. Because the end of the action, the end process, is rooted all the way in the beginning of it all. The dal lemevin. So what he's done here, he's brought together the concept of kisei, the concept of magbi l'shevis, and tied it all together. Again, is there anything here that we completely didn't learn before? I can't say that, but it doesn't hurt to have a review. It did not, to me, it did not shed more light on the Helam v'Hester Sheba Atzmus, even though he called it Kos Yutke. The only thing I could say is that maybe he's saying, this is speculation completely, but I usually avoid doing that, but here I'll do it because I think what he wants to say, that the Helam of the Tzimtzum initially only reveals the divine as it's limited to existence. That's in the beginning. But once the student has expanded his containers and he's grown, and he's now a Keli, he's able to accept the etzem of the teacher, or in this case, Atzmus, in his full glory, all the way from the highest levels. So he's saying that Helam of the Tzimtzum is now being transformed to the Helam Ha'atzmi, or the Helam V'Hester Sheba Atzmus. So you're getting the divine, not just as is. In other words, there's like 3 levels here. There's the divine etzem beyond everything. There's the divine as he manifests in Oyer, but the Oyer is still beyond existence. There's the Oyer as its subject, actually 4 levels, as it's subject to Tzimtzum, and it goes spoon-fed and directed into the Kalim of the Makablim, which is after the Tzimtzum. Through our Aveda, we transform the Tzimtzum, and we elevate ourselves, and we elevated the world. We are now being a Kalim, not just to the Oyer of the Kavachut, to the Yud, but also to the Oyer before the Tzimtzum, all the way to the Helam Ha'atzmi, to the highest levels that are higher than Oyer. And the Tzimtzum has now become, which was once a Tzimtzum just to diminish, so that was in order for us to be able to exist. We needed to have a Tzimtzum. There was no way to begin, because if there's no independent consciousness of us, you don't have anything. To have Tachtainim, you need a concealment. But now, the concealment is no longer a diminishment. The concealment itself is expressing the divine levels that are beyond revelation and concealment. And all of that is now in a form of Magbi and Leshevis. So they both, the Magbi reflects the elevation of it all, and Leshevis reflects its manifestation and containment. You want integration on all possible levels, from the highest all the way down to the lowest. That's what I would say, how I would sum up what we just learned. Okay, any questions or comments?
This is a small question, but it's been bugging me since we started talking about this earlier this week. It has to do with this yeshiva at the, I don't know about the Helen Hester level, but right beneath that, where the Eibush is called Melech Malchei Hamlachim, the King of the Kings of the Kings. I understand King of Kings, but what does it mean to be the King of the Kings of the Kings?
Well, he used that expression earlier on page 427. So let's look at it. Let's see what he says there. He says, He doesn't really break it down. It definitely is referring to a king of kings. Why he says 3, Melech Malchei Hamlochim? I would have to look up in other places, to be honest. Here he just wants to indicate that it's the level at the root of, that there's a melech on avodim, on servants. Then that melech is himself a subjugated, so to speak, to being like an eved to the melech Augustus, the melech Malchei Hamlochim. So I don't know if it's relevant here that it's 2 levels or 3 levels, but I'm sure in some places it may discuss it. Here he doesn't go into the difference. I don't think it's not, bottom line is, not every expression he necessarily wants to go into detail to explain the 3 levels here. He's just not that part of the theme here. But as I said, other Maimorim, there may be discussion on this topic.
Can I just saying he's Melech, and then clarify Melech HaMelachim? It's really two levels. That Melech, he's Melech, and then clarifies that Melech HaMelach.
I'm focusing on three levels, really.
Yeah, but since the Mittler Rebbe is not discussing three levels,
Well, that I'm wondering, but that's why I asked. I don't know. Now, my speculation is that, I mean, Malchei Hamlachim. I don't know if you could say like the Malachim are kings of the kings, or in other words, like or you could say it's Malchus of Atzilus. That's the. I know it's only singular, but Malchus is like that's the kingship of say what did you call it? Das Tachton or Yichud. The lower, like Baruch Shem Malchus the lower level of God's sovereignty, and Melech, the highest.
Listen,
king is,
what should I tell you? All this is speculation. If you find it another mimer, by all means, you could see if it fits in here. You're not going to have anything conclusive because the Mittler Rebbe doesn't say anything.
Doesn't talk. Okay.
He just says it, and that's it. But you have to remember, in my Morim, this is very common. Expressions are used that he doesn't necessarily explain. As I said, I always focus on what is he saying. If you want to get more on that, I would suggest looking other places where there may be discussion. I'm sure there are. What means Melech, Malchei Hamlachim? Here he's comparing it to Malchus Kol Elamim. So that there may be that contrast. I'm looking at the footnotes. I don't know if they talk about it, but I wouldn't. I wouldn't belabor it here right now, but you could look it up in other places. Yeah. What were you saying? Go ahead, Robin.
I was just gonna throw this out there. It's maybe off base, but it's the three levels of Yehuda Ilah, Yehuda Tata, and then the beyond. Perhaps
this is the speculation. Everything's possible.
Total speculation. That's what.
Yeah,
I'm
but
saying.
you see, I always go back to what's bothering us. Why do we need to explain it?
Yeah,
because we're just interested in knowing what Malchei Hamlachim is, which is fine.
Well, it's specific. It's a specific thing. That's all.
Okay, well, listen. If the Mittler Rebbe, I have nothing to say. What should I tell you? Everything's possible. I'm not going to deny what Yitzchak said or what you said. Those are the three levels, maybe.
But I like your approach. You always look to find it in the source text. So this, as you say,
I said there are my Morim probably that talk about this.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's continue here. V'omnam. Now, however, Hagam shemagbil l'sheves biyud de chochme de Malchus be Kabolos el Malchus shemayim shebetera mitzvos lemata. Though that this magbil l'sheves biyud that we're talking about, it's in the yud of chochme. Remember, the yud is the yud of chochme that he connected to the chochme of Torah, that descends below in order to be elevated and then even elevate the yud itself even to higher levels. Says Agam shemagbil shebe yud chachma de Malchus. The yud chachma should come down into Malchus because Malchus is dal, the dalet. The yud of chachma coming down into Malchus turns the dalet into a hey. How does that happen? Through our Kabolos el Malchus shemayim and Torah and Mitzvos lamata, but chayzer in a form of chayzer, like we learned. The light that comes from below, upward, magbi, she'elo lamayla mayla, that elevates higher and higher. Kamei Rosh Hashanah canal. You see clearly Rosh Hashanah is already mentioned 4 times at least. So clearly he wants that to be a working example here in our Avodah. So even though that's the process, im kol zeh, and this may be going back now to the Helam. Discussion of the Helam that we began with. So maybe we're going to get some clarity here. Im kol zeh mokem she'elu l'sham behelam destima de kol stimen. In other words, the place where it elevates to is the place of Helam of stima de kol stimen. the concealed of all concealments. In other words, we're going all the way higher than revelation altogether. Misham dafke, and it's dafke from there. So even though the Makbil Shevis is a Yud of Chachma is not stimid the kol stimid. The Yud of Chachma is a gili. It's a gili that comes down into the Dalet and illuminates and turns lesla magama klum Malchus that was bereft on its own is now enriched with the Yud. So he says the truth is we go even higher to all the way stimid the kol misham dafke yered gam lamata mata. So this is very consistent the way I earlier explained it. Now we're going not just to the Yud of Chachma or to the level of Giluyim, of revelation, we're going all the way up to the highest levels beyond revelation, and after from there, we bring the Leshevis. So the Magbi is also not just Magbiya to the Yud, it's the Magbiya elevating the Yud as well, if you remember. We're elevating the Yud as well to levels that are higher than Torah, because the Neshamas are reaching all the way into the Etzem through their Avodah. If you remember the Moir, not just Oir, maybe that's also part of this. The Moir, which is higher than Oir. Lies Melech La'elam. And the goal is that it should become, that highest level should become Melech La'elam. That should be the king that rules over the world. The God will sit on the throne, Melech La'elam. So we're talking about now the yeshiva all the way downward into as God relates to existence. But remember, it's one with God beyond existence. That third level, the Yichud of Yichud Elon, Yichud Tata. V'hainu, Mashen Islabish b'lavush ala pnimius, v'atzmius b'teira mitzvos. How he manifests. This means how he manifests in the garment of the core, of the inner and core in Teira mitzvos. So in other words, initially it was not on that level, but with Teira mitzvos you reach into that inner core, like it was Kamei b'matan Teira, sheyorad Hashem al hasinei lamata mato. Like it was by Matan Teira, where divine by Yered Hashem al Hasinai all the way down below. So it came from the highest to the down below by Matamato. Mamish mimkeme ha'atzmis, that he's coming literally from mimkeme ha'atzmis, from his very core place, not from the place of the divine that relates to existence, but from his core, inner, most intimate reality. Sheberemus atzmusei, which is in the exalted state, the Remus Atzmus, the exalted state of Atzmus, L'hoyer be'er pnei melech, to radiate, illuminate with a glow, with the aura of the face of the king. Ad shemalchusei Atzmis mamish berotzen kiblu, to the point that they accepted Malchusei Atzmus, that they accepted berotzen, say Malchusei rotzen kiblu aleim, Kiblu val kol dibur parcha nishmasa. That's the acronym. So he's talking about Matan Teira, where they accepted God Himself. Anechi Hashem elokech, they accepted His sovereignty to the point that their entire being was permeated with it, and every word their souls expired. As we know, kol dibur dibur, every one of the aseres adiburs, and it was as it was uttered, parcha nishmasa means their souls floated and flew upward. And Hashem had to revive them and resurrect them. Why is he bringing that? Probably he wants to show how much it permeated them, completely consumed them. Rak shehu lamata behelam. However, today, meaning by Matan Teira and before the Osed Lave, this is more in a state of concealment, not fully revealed. Well, the Osed Lave yizgalam in a helam azel lamata. The Osed Lave will be revealed. This helam, this highest levels of stimid, the chol stimid, all the way to the highest levels down below. Exactly as it is above, as he is in the highest levels that he dwells. Mamish b'shava will be equally exactly like that down below. And that's what it says, mochen l'shivtecha, to create an entity. A mochin, a dwelling place for him to dwell in, for him to settle in, for him to be integrated. Mochin l'shivtcha, a place for him to be where he dwells. Kanal v'dal, as we learned earlier, v'dai l'mevin. So what we take from this, what we take from this, I would add, is that the difference between now and the Osid Love is that now when we do Torah mitzvahs, Rosh Hashanah, even Matan Torah, all of that reaches these highest levels, and they're stimulating the highest level of a Magbi and creating a Leshevis, but it's not really in a full revealed way. That's why this world is not yet a revealed Dira B'Tachtenim in the fullest sense of the word. L'Osid Love, all that will be manifest in this world in the fullest sense of the word, where everybody will see it, everyone will experience it in a permanent and eternal way.
How are we going to be able to absorb that? I mean, is through, because we're preparing with the Torah and mitzvahs? I mean, how?
That's the thousands of years of our work is meant to be doing that. When we learn Chassidus right now, it's meant to prepare us. The more you understand this, the more you relate to it, the more you are, when it happens, you're like a student ready to receive it. But yeah, and frankly, also the pain and suffering of throughout history and through in a personal level, all of that is all about refining us to be able to receive these high levels.
Well, then I guess
sorry, Robin.
No, I just wanted to say, and then we have to view it as it's definitely worth it. Then I mean, not to be Cuban.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
What is the acronym Ein Chaf Daled?
I'll call Dibur Parchen Nishmason.
Which means again what?
For every Sarasa Dibris, for every utterance, every expression, their souls fluttered, their souls expired. It's a Gemara that when the Ten Commandments were said, every Dibur, called Dibur Parchen Nishmason is the expression. It's a Gemara in Shabbos, if you want to look it up. Sechta
Thank you.
Shabbos. I think it is, let me see, I may have it here. I need to, I'm going to end the recording because I have some important thing I must, Shabbos Pei Ches Amud Beis, 88b in Shabbos.
Thank you.
So let me stop here, the recording. We finished the paragraph on page 429, right?